Yeah.
You know what? He actually missed a whole lot of stuff that he was like,
It's like, oh, today.
the amazing means thing. He was like, wow.
Oh, yeah. The Iron Chef.
Yeah, no, you're set.
Yeah, that was cool.
Plus, we had Mercury and.
Yeah.
Did you hear what we did with?
Yeah, we have INSD
Ways and Means?
now.
Yeah. You got a bus.
Did I join this meeting?
Huh?
Did I join?
They all got a dozen.
I don't know if you did or not. Hang on just a second. Keep
The
changing.
Lost River Girls.
I just want to make sure I join this board meeting.
You're as you. And you want me to promote you? Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Anyway, it turned out really good. You got weather. The girl.
Okay, there you go.
Farm to school and his daughter's school. And so we looked at her at the Ways and Means.
Yeah.
And they were at the farm to school and. Bragging on Anna and Leah with the presentation. You didn't get to see that. did you?
No, I was there. I was
Oh,
just
were
in
you?
the overflow building.
Oh, okay. Got them all memorized. Actually, We start digging into the weeds. Not there. Anyway, I wanted to welcome you guys all to the budget committee. This is actually, Janet's committee, but I just kind of want to start off with kind of setting the stage. Last September 30th was the deadline for spending the estimate. And that right there was the absolute end of the most tumultuous time in education and probably in the history of the United States. I can't think of any other time where society was disrupted, schools were disrupted, and going into it, I had been through kind of a pandemic thing before, and I went to public health and said, you guys are going to be dictating what happens in the school, and the schools will be ground zero for whatever happens in society, and it'll all land magnified in the schools, and that's exactly what happened. So one of the things that when we saw this coming, our emergency response team got modified for a pandemic, and we stayed ahead of everybody else. And planning, prepping, we got caught off guard a couple times, but for the most part, we saw things coming and we were ready for it. We're the only large school district that didn't lose big time enrollment. We actually gained every year during the pandemic, we gained 100 kids. When we came out, we had 100 kids that year. So we'll talk more about enrollment later. The other thing that when we were in pandemic, a lot of other schools went home, shut down, took it easy, we ramped it up. The idea of what our conversation talking about is when we come out of this on the other side, we want to be in the best position ever. So every opportunity we have, we're going to take it. So the ESSER money that came along, ESSER 1, was pretty much about buying devices, buying hotspots, getting software to connect with kids. And in the background, using our people to connect with families with food service, making sure they had food and also social connection. And so, again, when we came out of the pandemic with all those connections, our kids came back, other places, statewide, 30,000 kids did not come back to school. Most of that was in the urban area. They lost connections with their kids. So another thing, so ESSER 2, as we got all the kids connected, when ESSER 2 came along, we had some projects to do. Yeah, we'll talk about those. But everybody in this district, and especially the board, was dialed into this is one-time money. We don't hire people with it. They kept telling us to hire people. It's like, no. We had SIA money that comes every year from the state, from the corporate activity tax. So when we hired that and did projects with the one-time money, and everybody was, you know, that's one of the things we presented to Ricky Ruiz. I was actually explaining to him, he had me explain it to the Ways and Means people on a tour, how that worked for us. Because he's living where they bought people and now they're laying off people. So anyway, we got a lot of projects done. You'll see some of the projects today. But on September 30th, the money ran out. It's important for you guys to know that we saw us running out of time before we ran out of money. So the Chillicothe project is the one key one. We knew it would not get done by September 30th. So what we did is we took money that we had already budgeted in our general fund for the alternative school, because the alternative school was an allowable expense for ESSER. So basically budgeted for alternative school, but paid for it with ESSER money. So that alternative school money was fund balance moving forward with no timeline. We're doing the Chillicothe gym with that one. We just did a switcheroo. It was transparent. The board knew what we were doing. We got approval from the Department of Education. And then we touched all the bases on making sure that that was all approved. So moving that big sums of money around and running out of ESSER money, it's gonna look like a big, huge mess. You're gonna see what $22 million fund balance last year, not so much this year because that fund balance was dedicated to a project. Also, going into negotiations, we still had well beyond our guideline for fund balance. And so what the board approved this year was a whole bunch more projects because it's one-time money fund balance. So we took you more projects than we would normally take. And that pulled down our fund balance. So now we're going into negotiations with the money set aside for projects and not people trying to use that fund balance to put in salaries because fund balance doesn't work in salary. People that don't understand that don't understand it. So we've been very strategic and very purposeful about how we've been managing the money. But what I can tell you is you're gonna see organized mess. It's gonna look messy, but we got it. And any questions you have, we should be able to answer. But these guys have been, all of the board members know exactly what I'm talking about. We've been talking about the same thing. But I just want to repeat it for here. So anyway, with that, we'll go through and Janet will try to make as much visible and transparent as we can because that's what we're trying to do.
All right, well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming. So, yeah, the first part of the year is the Iron Shack that was last Friday. So at any rate, like Lynn had said, I just want to bring everybody up to speed. The board gets to hear this every month and sometimes more than that. And budget committee members, the appointed ones, it doesn't always get portrayed out to you. So I want to give you, hey, what's been happening this year? Where are we at? What are we doing as we go into Thursday night? So you guys kind of have a little bit better idea what's happening. So as we get started, I just want to remind everybody what the role is. Okay, so you meet publicly to review that budget, which y'all should have now. You receive the budget message and the budget document, which you've received the budget document. The message will be sent to or given to you on Thursday evening. You ask questions. I know you guys are really good at asking questions, and same protocol as last year. I think it worked well with the hey, what's this? What's that? Page number, da da da. I can get back to all of you. This is how we do that. That way everybody has the same information. You'll approve the budget as presented or amended by the majority vote. And then you will also approve that permanent tax rate of 40519. Then you will also approve the property tax for the GO bonds. And then you will recommend it for the board of directors for adoption, which will take place in June. June 12th, to be exact. It's coming quickly. Yes, ma'am.
So this is my second time going through this. Can you please remind me the permanent tax rate that has already been set?
Correct.
We just have to approve it each year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's a permanent. So
Okay.
it's already been established. That's the rate. And then we correlate that with the amount of taxes that we are asking for property taxes. Okay. And then of course the GO bonds is what that payment is on that annual basis. Okay. All right, so who is on the budget committee? We have 5 board of directors and then an equal amount of appointed electors. The appointed members are registered voters in the district, and they cannot be officers, agents, or employees of that school district. And you're appointed for a staggered 3-year term. So if I can, I'm going to kind of introduce, because I know we've got a couple of new people. So as we go through this, position 1, John Rademacher, represents Chiloquin and Gilcrest. Position 2, Brooke Kluwer, is Henley and Keno. Mark Staunton for position 3 for Bonanza, Maryland, Malin. And then position 4, Steve Lowell, and who is also your board chair, Ferguson and Shasta, and then Jill O'Donnell, Peterson and Stearns. Moving on to the appointed electors, Diana Otero. She represents Chiloquin and the Gilcrest. Bill Jennings, Henley and Keno. Jason Jesperson, Bonanza, Maryland, and Malin. And Carrie Dickinson. Did I say that right? Dixon, sorry. Ferguson and Shasta. And then we have a vacant position. Nobody applied to the Peterson and Stearns position. So we are running on 9 members. Okay, and then just to introduce administration for you, of course, Mr. Shimoniak as your superintendent. I'm your director of business services. Director of human resources is Jamie Bogman. Director of elementary curriculum, Dr. Doris Ellison. And director of secondary is Jeff Bullock. And I don't see David, he's director of special education. So the state of the district, this is going to kind of go between Glenn and myself. So what I wanted to present to you this evening is, here's where we are as of March 31st. We don't have April 30th quite yet. It'll be in the next day or two, but these are what's been reconciled. As you can see, there's 23, 24. These are actual numbers. So there's that 22 million beginning fund balance that we were talking about. And we brought in 83.7 million of actual revenues, with also 63.5 million of expenditures going back out. This is your adopted budget. This is what you guys have adopted last year, original. Over here, we have where we actually are as of right now. We are audited at 10.3 million for our beginning fund balance coming into 24-25. So far, as of March 31st, we're at 85.1 million, and we have spent 66.8 million. As of right now, for March 31st. Our annual forecast, so what we have is, we kind of forecast out from April, May, and June, the rest of the year. While it picks up the actuals, we forecast those last 3 months where we think we end up. So where we think we end up is 5.4, almost 5.5 million, which is at that 4.85% of our overall budget, which means that we are within policy. District policy is that we would be a 4% ending fund balance. So that gives you a pretty good overview of where we are on March 31st. We're sitting fairly well, but we did just do a supplemental budget in the April meeting, of which this has not hit that budgetary numbers back. These are originals. These are not reflective of the new numbers that we presented in April. However, this is what it looks like. So there's that 121 million in the general fund. We've had to up it by 1.3 million to end at 123 million. So these are small in comparison. This $836 transfer is from the Lost River Community Center. If you will recall, last year we transferred out of the general fund over $1 million to cover the Lost River Community Center finishing project there. That project has been completed outside of bleachers. We've got the bleachers on order and have enough in there to cover those bleachers and installation of those bleachers. However, 836,000 is coming back to the general fund. Okay.
We put a lot in there because we had a lot of outstanding projects, so that in case we need to move for other things.
Yeah.
Just put a whole lot in there, make sure that project.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. So the expenditure side of life. So here's where this looks large. Within that instruction, we had to up it by 1.3 million. And what I've got is the heavy hitters in there. There was a lot of small things that took place, but the heavy hitters that really impact that 1.3 There was 4 positions that were unfilled from the prior year. For whatever reason, they didn't roll in with our budget, whether that we left them out or it just didn't roll. We're not 100% sure. We can't track that. But those positions actually got filled, so they were outside of our budget. There was an increase in software that was totally unexpected, and so that was a major factor. The other thing is for Chiloquin and Gilcrest and Gearhart, as an incentive, we incentivize them with housing stipends and mileage for their work to come back and forth. That,
Yeah, those were hard to fill positions that were unfilled. Really impacting the school.
How come Bonanza didn't get like their bus drivers? Because I know they're having a hard time getting bus drivers and retaining.
so that's the new problem, right? And when we look on Thursday, that is one of the goals of the board, or one of the priorities of the board, is bus drivers overall, because Bonanza is getting hit, but so is.
Right, and that's what,
Altogether.
that's what I talked to other track meets, I've talked to, having problems with the bus drivers. And it seems like it's always a money deal, so I was wondering if like, and I'd heard that we were doing, because you're paying mileage, well, maybe if you paid mileage for all of them.
And yeah, there is some that we do pay mileage on their bus drivers.
And, write that up, because we want that to come back up, because we'll get in the weeds and a lot of stuff later
Okay,
on.
no,
Yeah.
it's on my mind.
Because,
Yeah, no, you're good, yeah. And I know that that's been also brought to.
Well,
light.
and it's not just, like I said, it's not Bonanza, like,
Right.
when I go to the track meet, I talk to other people, and they're like, oh, yeah, we're struggling, you know, this and that. And
Yes, and
So-
all year we've struggled with bus drivers, but it is a board priority. And I do know that, as far as negotiations, how do we make that better for them?
Okay, good, well, that's, that's good attention.
So, but anyway, at any rate, that's where this 1.3 is coming into play. Also within that 1.3, we had some positions that resigned at the end of the year unexpectedly. And we had to fill those positions with professional services contracts. So we are contracting people or their services to come in and provide services to the students. That took a big hit to that 1.3. Under the support services, we're looking at a 2.6. Couple of things that are going on there. There was 2 admin positions that we added, one at Gearhart and one at Gilcrest, in addition to what they already had. This was for extra support for those buildings. And then buses. So we had ordered 18 buses. And as you know, the federal funding of that, which we procured a DEQ grant to go along with those buses. So we should have been able to pay the net of that, what the DEQ was per bus. DEQ is not releasing any money as of right now. So preparing for the worst, we're still getting 9 buses this year and then 9 buses at the beginning of the next fiscal year. So what we did is we went back in and said, okay, fully fund that so that we cover the DEQ. We should be able to get those back. Plus, we're going to get a tariff, $2,500 a bus on the buses. So we're going to get hit with that. That one we won't obviously recoup. And I do know that as of a couple of weeks ago, DEQ was starting to release money. So fingers crossed, we will get that and only have to pay the net. That would be great. But we got to prepare for the worst.
If they don't, if DEQ doesn't fund it, then will the 70% from the state fund?
So you would get the 70%, well, you would get depreciation costs off of those buses. Yes, that will still come into play.
DEQ is only paying 30.
No, DEQ, well, DEQ was like, I want to say it was like 35,000 a bus. Yeah. It was a flat rate, yeah. Another heavy hit right here is interfund transfers. Couple of things is going on there. Food services. I had projected coming into 24-25 that they would have a positive balance. They do not have a positive balance coming into 24-25. henceforth, they're still negative in 24-25. So we're kind of behind where we should be with them. That is a pretty large transfer that you will see in here. And then IDEA grant was audited a couple of years ago. Out of that audit came some fixes. One of the fixes was providing professional development. There was 300,000 that needed to be set aside for that professional development. So we projected that we would have to cover the 300,000. However, it's a little bit larger than that. It's roughly around 500,000 that we're actually could cover. Excuse me. For 24-25. Construction reserve accounts. We created those for 24-25. We made those transfers. We did add in the Chiloquin and Henley locker room projects. Both of those are roughly $1 million a piece. However, we had money left over from some of the other projects that we had done because they came in under budget. So there was a little, we gained a little ground there. And so the transfer that you'll see here in just a moment is not as large going into for the construction projects. So with that, operating contingency is going to take that hit. This has been approved by the board. What my prediction is we will end the year 24-25 roughly about 7.5 million. That is still within our 4% district policy at this point. Moving forward, here's the special revenues. It kind of all correlates. A lot of this has to do with the food services. That's our special revenue. And then also that IDEA grant. And there's that transfer. 1.7 of that 1.9 is hitting food services and the IDEA grant. And then of course there's changes there on the expenditure side to match up 1.5. Construction reserve is the other place that we made the difference. This 50,000 actually had to be accrued in 23-24. This was some money that was brought over from the city or Klamath County. And what had happened is we accrued it in the general fund.
Playground money?
What's that?
Is that the playground money?
That's Stearns playground money. Yep. We accrued it, so we had to apply it to general fund. And so now I have made it within this interfund transfer to put it back in there because it ended up being 50,000 from the county and the district also made up 25,000. So we wanted to keep that separate for Stearns playground and put it in that construction fund. Again, that's just the changes. There's that 836,000 coming out and going to the general fund. Okay. Reserve funds, this 210 on local sources. So we made a couple of changes on the E-rate. The E-rate used to be sitting in the general fund with our technology. However, we have a technology reserve account. Those E-rate funds are stemmed from technology. So they need to be within the reserve fund. So we're building that balance a little bit with the E-rate.
Can I explain that one?
Yes, you may.
So E-rate is the federal subsidy for switches, servers, et cetera. You can kind of cover everything, even computers and stuff, but they really tighten down on it. And so Karen budgets out the replacement cycles for switches and servers, and we keep some spare ones here too. So whenever we spend money on that, there's two ways to do it. You can either spend the money. You can spend the money claiming your 70% reimbursement and you only pay 30% upfront, or you can pay for all of it and you get the money back the next year. When we get it back the next year, it lets us put that into the reserve account. And that's what keeps your reserve account up, is you're budgeting for what you're buying every year, but then you get the money you get back, puts it into the reserve, so you always keep track of how much you're spending on technology. It's pretty easy to lose track of exactly what those costs are when you're getting the discount rate of 70%. And it really helps on this end of budgeting, because if something happens, well, we still know we've got 200,000 coming back to help us out with something. Anyway, it's just one of those things where we were doing it the other way. And that's how they're doing it here. And I asked Karen to switch over to the reimbursement rather than the discount.
So where's the E-rate going to again then?
So it's actually going into the reserve accounts, those.
The
600.
technology reserve.
Okay, techno, that's the reason.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. the
because I
technology.
have a note about that.
Yep, that's what's going in there, and then I think we projected maybe about 285,000 coming into 25, 26.
Yeah, because I noticed that you guys had nothing for the E-rate this year and I had a like question like why?
Why? Yeah, right.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we moved that over there, to that. I did reduce the interfund transfers a little bit, coming into there, we had quite a bit of reserve sitting there. So we kind of balanced that back out to kind of help augment a little bit, but not to really actually take, it doesn't really take away. We're still in good shape to get our reserve, needs met there. So as of March 31st.
Hey, Jen,
Yeah, go ahead.
hey, Jen, I want everybody to understand reserve accounts, why we do those reserve accounts. In order to maintain replacement cycles on technology, if you don't do a reserve account, then it's almost impossible to have a replacement cycle. Because now you have to go into your general fund and try to find money to go buy something that you knew you had to buy anyway. And so, again, a lot of this has to do with who's looking at our books. In negotiations, the unions are trained to look at our fund balance. And so if all of this reserve money was sitting in the fund balance, we'd have a fund balance back up around $20 million, and that's our money. We want that. So we put the money, we know we're gonna be buying technology replacement. We're gonna be buying books. We're gonna be buying equipment. So we push that money instead of leaving it in fund balance, we push it out there and it's in reserve accounts, and then we manage that.
And it's the same idea behind the construction, the 400.
And I think the board already
Same idea.
knows that you guys know how we're operating. I mean, it's not a secret. It's just that it's where you put the money. It's very visible, and union asked me, it's like, that's exactly what that's for. But when it just sits in fund balance, man, everybody wants it.
Okay. Okay, so moving on, just kind of a visual for you, those general fund revenues. This is actuals as of March 31st. Our state funding is at 75.61%. This is what we've collected. This is that gray area. The local is 23%. That's your property taxes. Intermediate is, like ESD monies and different resources there. It's a small amount. And then all others, of course, 0.01 is everything else there. But that's where we sit right now as of March 31st. Again, the expenses, same deal. Salaries and payroll, this really hits home when you show this. And the reason why I say that is we've been in negotiations. And so they don't realize how big that number really is. And so that's just as of March 31st. I would suspect it's going to be more of about 80–85% by the time we get done.
Purchase services.
And then the purchase services, that's at 9%. That goes back to those professional services contracts.
That could be in salaries and benefits, but they're people like speech therapists, we can't find them. So we get the people through purchase services. So I consider purchase services for the most part of salaries and benefits.
And then, of course, supplies and materials is a 5%. Transfers is right now at 5%. And then, of course, all other capturing at 4%. So it's just a good visual for y'all to see. Fund balance by month. So the blue line indicates our current year activity, and the orange is prior year, so 23, 24. Where you want to look at is we're at March. The difference between the 2 years, again, that kind of goes back to where we have that fund balance sitting and how we've utilized this, because this is only the general fund. the remainder, April, May, and June, this is an estimate of where we think we might be according to our predictions. So enrollment, I'm gonna pass it over to you. I'll run the clicker.
So this is since 2020. So notice it was like a really steady decline from 2020 down to 2013. I don't know what happened in 2013, but it turned around, started going back up. So for the last 13 years, we've had a steady increase until this year, there was a drop off. So this is the first time we've had a drop in enrollment in 13 years. Want to go to the next one? Go back. So this is taking a look at like 5 or 6 years, but progress. Yeah, so we were going up, kind of plateaued in 22, 23, 24, and then going into this year, we don't have the third bar, that would be May. So, I mean, it's a pretty steady pattern. We start out high, like in this year, start out high, finish lower at the end of the year. Start out high, finish low. So there's a really pretty good pattern to what we do during the year, and we'll probably follow that pattern this year, and it looks like we are. So, we get our money from the state by how many kids we have. There's a whole lot of other ways we do it, but we get money through the federal government, but basically it's based on enrollment. And so when we were going up, before Janet, it's like we project our enrollment. If I'm following the pattern, I think we're gonna have 6,800. I'm gonna probably project 6,750. Keep it conservative. Because if you guess high and the kids don't show up, now you budgeted money high and it didn't come in. But if you budget low and the kids come in, well, we have more money. That's good. So when we were conservative going up, we missed the projection this year because we kind of like were thinking, actually we held it pretty steady because we're out of room in our in-town schools. But it dropped off. Here's the key. When it drops off, you can't, for next year, we can't try to hit that mark this year. We have to get ahead of the dive. Otherwise, we're losing money each year. We have to get ahead of that. And so that's what we're going to be trying to do with this budget and with our staffing. And we've already eliminated like 6.5 positions right now for next year. And we've done it through attrition. Like, I mean, some simple things like Keno they had 1 teacher per grade, except they had a bubble in 4th grade, so they had 2 teachers. They had a bubble in 6th grade, so they had 2 teachers. 6th grade's going away, so is one of the teachers. So we find those little pockets. So that's what we've been doing ever since we got the information on the supplemental budget. We've been working on that in cabinet, and we're going to continue. So through attrition or through other means, we're trying to right size our staffing with our population. So this is each school, K through 12, for the total in the building, and this was as of March 31st. And then this is last year's numbers at the same time. And so it's either positive or minus. And so, as you can see, both Bonanza schools drop down, and it's unfortunate because on our outlying schools, we have plenty of room to grow. In-town schools, we don't. And in-town schools, we have transfer requests that we can't take, which really hurts us. Outside schools, we have room for them, but they're not showing up. So I don't know, Jason, you have any?
I have no idea.
I know, nobody has any.
I didn't know there were so many kids. How many kids are missing?
Well, between them, it's like 36, just, I mean, at that time, that snapshot from this year. But this stuff happens like that. Next year it could go up. anyway, there's the numbers, where they're at. This is the key one, I already talked about it. Elementary schools in Klamath Falls urban growth boundary are at or near capacity due to the growth and transfers. Construction plan on Homedale Road, right, basically kind of behind Brixner. 72 units going in now, room for 205 in future phases. That's a problem for us. That's a huge problem. The plan was, and we were looking at this years ago, when I first got in here, the plan was turn Brixner into an elementary school and build a new middle school. So we'll see. So there's additional capacity in district secondary. So that's kind of the dynamics of our.
I have a question though.
Sure.
Do you guys know how many kids? Like out of the, so for, let's just use Henley for example, how many kids that go to Henley that are out of, don't live in that district? And same
That's
with like,
Jamie's world.
I don't have a hard number for you, but it's gonna be a big percentage, Jason. It was majority of Henley kids, especially in the elementary. The Henley attendance boundary is not that big and families live in it, don't have kids. The majority of the kids at Henley are gonna be transfers.
okay, so I was wondering, I mean, I was thinking about it, some of your answers, like I noticed that Bonanza, for an example, is there's a lot of kids that transferred out, and they've had kids transfer in. And I don't know, I don't understand. I've never understood why the kids are they're just transferring around from school to school to school. One year they're going to Lost River, the next year they're going to Bonanza, and then the next year, they're transferring, it seems like, and I'm thinking of one kid for an example, but they didn't
Well,
move. They
You know,
just-
sometimes they stop living with mom and go live with dad or grandma. Another one, it's like, I got mad at
Yeah.
my teachers, I'm leaving, I hate the school.
Well, that's what but I think that's probably what it is. I think it's too easy to transfer. And so I think that's why the numbers fluctuate so much. That's in my theory.
I think there's, Jason, I'd say there's, I mean, if you were talking like specifically Bonanza, at both schools, I think you're seeing an influx of like the Blind Mountain effect going on there.
Yes.
There's
We do that too, yeah.
there's changes going on out there that are like, I mean, because it's more consistent between the junior high school and the elementary school, like where it's like, there's just people that, I mean,
Yeah,
there's stuff going on out there that.
yeah, and that's the other thing.
And if you look at the kindergarten numbers, our kindergarten numbers this year are down from what they were last year. So Bonanza, for example, sent a sixth grade class to the high school of 31 and brought in a kindergarten class of 23.
Right,
So eight of those kids in their 13 are right out of sending out and coming in. So some of them are just that bigger classes leave, smaller classes coming in.
Right.
So, and then the remaining 5 or 6 or
I think
they move or.
but what Mark's talking about is our area, Bonanza's area
has some trains.
it's transient. I mean, we have, it's just different than the Henley area or.
The farming, ranching.
Well,
mix well with the transit,
Well, no,
you know.
that's the same, but it's more like, if the sheriff's going up to Blind Mountain a lot, pretty soon, sometimes
Yeah, 10 kids.
that don't come back.
Yeah.
For
The
other
one that
reasons.
I don't know if you're asking, like, just
Go ahead.
any input, but I know you highlighted enrollment dropped for the first time in 13 years, but what I look at and what I think is concerning is really from the 3rd grade class down, we've had consistent reduction in enrollment in every class. So I think you peaked in the 4th grade class now. And we have dropped every year consistently. So like we say, this is the first time we have declining enrollment. We're on a 4-year trend of declining enrollment that will come through the school in the next 5 years, unless you all of a sudden have a kindergarten
District-wide,
class.
the pattern of incoming kids is, that's definitely.
So like,
Except we may get it.
I could see you, unless you have a kindergarten class that like bubbles ginormously in the next year, 2 years, which, I mean, No, I mean, I don't think it will because I know enough young people that aren't having kids. They're like, it's just not that.
Well, we can't put them in the suburban.
And so like, I'm not at all worried about the construction of this, like the construction going on because I think that in 4 years, you could be 400 kids down from where you are today based off of your current projection of declinement year after year from 4th grade down.
Well, and also the jobs that just left, that are leaving the community right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry, you had a question?
I was just
Sure.
curious about the capacity too of some of the schools. I know that there is, I mean, I'm in the Ferguson district, so that's where I look at. And I know they just got a module approved in last budget, so just curious to see. Yeah, and I'll have a kindergartner entering.
Oh, you do?
I will.
And Peterson, I could see it run to that, and that's where all those, that infrastructure is.
Yeah, that, probably the most dire is Ferguson and Peterson. And again, we approved a whole lot of projects this year, so a priority that I'm seeing coming up would probably be to do at least another modular at Ferguson and a modular at Peterson next year, or something, additional there. The district spent a whole lot of money getting rid of modulars. And so I'm real reluctant, but again, we have to do what we have to do.
Is there any data on the low income housing of, because to me, in my mind, on Homedale, it's low income housing, and I think a majority of people who are gonna move into it are already here. But I didn't know if there's already, because I don't think people are gonna move from out of the area to move into low income housing.
That's a good point,
But I
Brooke.
don't know if there's data
Well-
that supports one way or the
I
other.
think they're moving out of the city.
Okay.
So that would be, that would be a bonus for us if they moved from the city. Yes.
Well, I can speak to that because I ran the housing authority for 25 years and I'm responsible for that.
No, that's good. Housing is always.
Well, it's a two-edged sword because I mean, I get pressure from the city and the county to build housing. We need housing. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the housing authority owns 35 acres, and so we're gonna build on it. It just makes sense, but I get that it concentrates people there. But you're right, I don't think people move to Klamath Falls to live in housing. What you do is you get people that are living in substandard housing, get the opportunity for better housing, or you get people that are doubled up, no longer have to double up. I don't think it adds any more kids to the mix, it just spreads them.
It might shift them around.
Here to here. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and I want you guys to just get a picture in your head where Brixner is. And then, do you guys know where that property is? You probably see the buildings going up. Okay, just behind there is a big field. And where we were looking at on Keller, putting in middle school, it's marginally big enough. And it's like, again, just plant that seed. It's like, there's a much better place with better access. Other property has terrible access. One has one road in and you have to go back out. But there's much better access right there in that neighborhood.
I think that has to stay vacant because if there's a breach of the
Flood.
A canal, that's where that water is gonna flood.
Yeah.
So it has to.
Oh, is
stay
that it?
vacant.
That is the floodplain for the Klamath County.
Who owns that?
The county does.
No, this is private property then. Anyway, we can look at that later.
He's talking.
Next one.
There's someone next.
It's right there.
So
Who's got it?
I'm just gonna talk about the facilities committee. Because when I got here, I put into place several committees that I'd like to have committees. Rather than me and another somebody, whoever else, trying to figure out what projects. The way that this facilities committee works is that like Dennis Zulo and I go around, put boots on the ground at every school, principals know we're coming through and they can show us, well, we need, this remodel, we need this fixed up. And it's not the ticky-tacky stuff like replacing a light. It's like major maintenance or minor capital construction. So we go make a list of all of that. And then we bring it in, we kind of toil over it a little bit and say, kind of figure out what's the most urgent based on safety or based on programs. And then we bring in the district facility committee. Jeff's on it. Steve's on it. Mark's on it. Janet. Steve Johnson was on it. Dennis Zulo. So we have a group that sits down and tries to figure out what priorities we want to have. And then they take it to the board. And then the board gets to wrestle around with these projects. And again, we've been doing these projects with ESSER money primarily. The other thing is, it's really good to know is that we have, the Noah's Ark of tradesmen, I like to call it, because we have 2 electricians, 2 plumbers, 2 carpenters, we have 2 of everything. So we self-perform building our own buildings, like the addition at Shasta, the addition at Peterson, Stearns, and Henley Middle. We built those in-house. ESSER money's gone. Any building like that, it'll come, we probably want to keep them in-house. We're using our own guys and plan them out. So again, Ferguson would be a good place. Peterson not so much, because on their campus, they're crowded. If you're putting another building up there, how are you gonna get more kids in the gym, more kids in the lunchroom? More parking, you can't. So, there is lots of room at Ferguson, so that might be like next year's for us to talk about doing a self-perform 8-unit building. Anyway, that's the process. The facilities committee kind of brings all that forward with the board and with Jim.
Okay, so you'll see there's 2 years, that we have here, 23-24 fiscal year 24-25. What this whole list was actually intended for 24-25, and these were all of, facilities, committee projects were, coming out of our general fund in that beginning fund balance, that 22 million that we started with. That's where that began. And so what we did is we put these in those 400 construction projects and labeled them by year. And so we were able to start on some of these in 23-24 because there was no impact to the students, so we could start early, get them done by June 30th and get those done. So, and some of them spilled over, but we did start them in 23-24. So Gearhart received a new roof, Bonanza flooring, Malin windows, Mazama had some new floorings put in all the way through. Henley High School had a repair on their tennis courts, Gilcrest flooring and Stearns flooring. For fiscal year 24-25, these are completed. Henley High School bleachers, more flooring, Henley High School chiller, that's in there as well. Yay!
Yay! If I ever flip the switch.
Yeah, exactly. This district-wide security was included in there, of 165,000. We put some, extra measures in place, for security.
We don't talk about it.
Correct.
Just because if we talk about it, they won't be security.
Correct.
Data, a lot of data stuff? Are you securing data?
No, this was
Like-
physical security.
So like when you ring the bell to come in the front door.
That's one of the.
That's
Sniper on the roof
That's looking
at. But it's pretty amazing, some of the stuff that
Yeah,
we purchased.
Yes, for sure. Keno parking lot also got an upgrade. And so, those were just some of the things that were, and keep in mind, I want you to keep this in mind. I gave this report back in January's board meeting, so I'm utilizing the same numbers. Some of the things coming up on the next slide are in process, just not complete. So we're still chipping away at them. Some highlighted projects. Here's your Henley bleachers. Looks really nice. Here's that floor at Mazama. I think that's kind of my favorite. And then the parking lot at Keno. We highlighted that, in that January report, even though it was, must have been one of the wintry days, so we picked that up, so. Projects in process, so these were all, approved through that facilities committee process. And so these are the things that are still outstanding and or are rolling forward. Henley Middle locker rooms, I mentioned that earlier. That has been approved and is in the works right now. Let's see, this one has been put on hold, I think, for a hot minute, I think. I think there
I
was
haven't
some,
talked to him about that. recently.
yeah.
That Henley Middle locker room thing, because of handicap access and there were stairs, we had to build ramps. That got to be a real expensive one, more expensive than we thought.
Mhm.
It's all set to go.
But it's in motion. Chillipan locker rooms, same situation. It kind of ties in, the new gym doesn't have the locker rooms like the Bonanza new gym does. And so we upgraded the locker rooms at Chillipan. Ceiling tiles, Gilcrest dust control, that's another one that's a biggie, that's gonna get taken care of or is in motion. Tree removal with Gilcrest and Keno, is a huge thing for, the fire prevention or.
Defensible things.
Yes, there we go. Painting at Gilcrest and bathroom remodels, which the Bonanza bathroom remodel has turned into a district-wide bathroom remodel for 25-26, and it's pretty large. So that's just a few of those. And again, like I said, these have been in motion, but this is a January report that I don't, we've got numbers going on there. So new gyms, highlight there. We've got the new Bonanza gym up fully functional and being used readily. We ended up being at 9.1 million. We did have some change orders that happened, unforeseen circumstances essentially. But what we did is we utilized ESSER funds in the amount of 6.5. We drained ESSER 3 with that 6.5 million and to complete, and then we picked up 2.5 out of the general fund. There was a small amount of salaries from our maintenance guys. That was small. Most of your work was 8.5 million, which that is from Kinsman Construction that had the contract for the Bonanza gym.
Probably good to throw in right now, but with ESSER money, we had to move really, really fast on these projects. We couldn't dilly-dally around with them. So like and you never know where the unexpected is gonna come. Bonanza doesn't have water for fire suppression, so we had to build our own fire suppression system there. That got pretty intricate. The other thing there that is gonna be a problem going forward is parking for the facilities. Now, we have to kind of scrounge around and make sure because we're imposing on the neighbors, so we have to find parking somewhere.
Okay, so, and then moving on. So what's in process right now is this Chillipan gym. These are pretty up-to-date recent pictures as to where they are right at the moment. I picked those up. We have weekly meetings, updates from the construction crew. And so they keep us with a 3-week schedule every week, and then they keep us with photos. And we meet in person. So we keep a pretty good tab on this one. We wanted, we needed it to be done in the end of June. However, when we had the snow days, we lost some time there. And then about the time that it got really icy and that sort of thing, they couldn't get on the roof. So we lost a few days there because they could only get up there a half day, not in the morning, things like that. So we did lose some days there. However, we are pushed out to August 11th. We're feeling pretty solid about that as far as a finish date and getting clearance to be occupied in there. Because I believe about the 15th of August is when sports will start, right?
Are the locker rooms done?
The locker
We're
room,
working on.
I think that,
The boys is torn apart.
But I mean, as far as the finish date.
I think we have them like about August 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what pretty much all of our standard stuff.
I haven't made the last year.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. So this is current. This is as of May 2nd. We've spent 3.2 million. We have a contract with Diversified at 5 million $999,000. There has been some change orders. This has been, as you probably have heard, it's been a struggle. Every time we dig, we have to have somebody on site to monitor for artifacts. And we've been held up a few times because of found artifacts. So that also played into the delay in days as well. So that's where we currently are right there. I supplied a few pictures. There it is as with the framing essentially. Here's the inside. We're making pretty good progress. And then again, another picture of the outside. And it's a replica of Bonanza, essentially minus the water rooms. So moving on to the Lost River Community Center. This has been in conjunction with Lost River Booster Club. So this building looks really nice as well. This is our portion only. Booster Club took a good portion of that, and this is the pieces that we picked up on, and to help that out as a in-kind effort, if you will. But that's the recent pictures of that. There's some of the equipment here. This is, I believe, their grand opening, and then of course they're playing volleyball. I mentioned earlier about the bleachers is the only thing left to go. Those bleachers, the flooring in there is softer than what we had anticipated, and so we needed to buy, what do you want to call that? I want to call them blocks so they can roll out on the blocks, so it doesn't damage the floor. So we kind of had a hold up there and had to have it replanned and redrawn up and all of the things. So we know that they're in process, they're coming.
I heard this week.
Is it this week? Oh, good.
I think Dennis said he's this.
I knew it was getting close. I just didn't know when. But so we do have enough money left in there in that construction account for Lost River to cover those bleachers, because we know what that is. It's a contract all in. And there's a little bit of buffer for any permits just in case. And right now we're at 1.4 million. The Crater Lake Learning Center. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So this is down on Washburn Way. So kind of give you, this has been an ongoing project for about 5 years because this was bought in 21 with SIA funding. The purchase of that was 656,000, excuse me. ESSER funding contributed about 1.2 million. And then construction excise tax that we receive is 1.7. The breakdown on this though, I kind of wanted to separate this out so we kind of all knew what was happening when we got in there and started with that remodel. There was mold and it had been in the floors, in the walls, into the ceiling, the whole gamut. So I separated that out. So we kind of knew what that looked like. That mold abatement ended up costing us $264,000, and that roof all in about $1,069,000. The building.
That was HVAC too. That was roof and HVAC, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. Building acquisition, this 1.6 million includes the 656,000. So we're roughly about $1.6 million or $1 million with remodel with 600,000 for the actual purchase of the building. We've self-performed on the remodel, everything but the roof. The roof we did not. That one we did contract that one out. That was a pretty big project. Is there anything you want to add? Okay. And oh, I was going to mention, sorry, let me go back. It is up and running. I do believe Doris has moved in over there. Yes, and
She moved in?
They're setting up offices right now. She had a day off yesterday, so she spent it over there, but they're in the process of, the desks are in and they're starting to move in.
so, and with that,
Book fair on May 12th.
yes, there's a book fair that's going to be in there, and that's books for the kids district wide. It'll be free to them. Come up and pick up those books. And then, of course, there's the kindergarten model classroom that's going to happen during the summer. That will be over there. And then, of course, not all, but secretarian services, the admin and services are all being planned for in there. So just a few few things are already hitting the books for that. So last,
When was the homeschool stuff?
Oh,
Oh,
they'll be moving to, and I want to stop right there. Thank you for mentioning homeschool. When I was doing enrollment, can you go back to that slide? This is the big. Yeah, they did. So this is, Great Basin Homeschool, and they dropped. And a lot of the homeschools, the district homeschools have dropped because kids who went out on COVID are coming back. However, we're a homeschool in our district, and then there's also another one that gets a lot of kids, and that's the Southern Oregon ESD homeschool, where they basically sign them up and do nothing. And so right now, in fact, on Friday, where we have, is it this Friday, Jeff? We have a, homeschool marketing task force. We are gonna go get those kids and we are going to bring them into our homeschool, where we've got some exciting things that they're going to offer as far as activities on a regular basis. Also, we're looking at doing outreach once a month, like we have an agreement with Gearhart, with Melissa Nixon out there. She's excited about this, where our homeschool people will actually go up to Gearhart. So anybody out in that area can come down. Same thing for Gilchrist and Chillicothe.
Well, Children's Community Center, the board of directors approved using that center. If we had homeschool wanted to come in, they said we.
Perfect. So between outreach, possibly doing gas cards so people can afford to come in and do those activities. Because right now, for the homeschool program, we have one teacher, 230 kids. And we get the same amount for those kids as 1 to 25. It's our cash cow. We're gonna milk that cash cow. And not just for the money, but to service the kids that are not getting serviced right now. And the people in the homeschool program and the distance learning program, Great Eastern Homeschool, they are all over this. They are so excited to be moving that building, knowing that we can do storefront advertising and get those people in. So that's the design right there. We want to increase our enrollment to our homeschool.
So the kids that are homeschooled and maybe sign up to go into, if they lost River, to take an ag class, if they're not in the Great Basin program, do we still get to count them as an enrolled?
I believe we do as a fraction. Yeah,
or, yeah, is that?
each state does things different. And I know like I've been involved with homeschool and distance learning and stuff, and we always welcome those kids in. Come on in, they want to do band. How do you do band at home? You know, and PE and things like that. So wherever they want to come in, we try to bring them in. And pretty soon they make friends and say, yeah, I'll go there, have fun.
Jeff, did you want to add to that?
We've got two pieces there. One, if they're registered with an online charter school with the state, then that charter school is receiving their state funds, so we can't put them in as our enrollment, but we charge the state charter school a tuition, and that's spelled out in law how much we can charge them. If they're registered with Southern Oregon ESD as a true homeschooled student, then if they come, then the ESD doesn't collect tax dollars on the kids or enrollment funds. And so then we enroll them in those classes and collect the partial day. So there's several different things out there, and they all kind of get lobbed under the umbrella of homeschool.
Oh,
So the goal is
Wrong way.
double the homeschool in 2 years.
like, this is looking good here.
Jeff, can you look at, like, is there any data to look at of what amount of kids that are in all of those things that like are out there in Klamath County? And does it like show by geographic location or like where, like, is that what you guys are looking at when you're talking marketing?
Right.
I get that. Actually, Ashley has that from the ESD. And it's, so they enroll the kids at the ESD and Ashley gets it from them also when
The
students.
ESD, it's not a homeschool program, it's just the like reporting agency, isn't it? Like.
They actually have their own homeschool program that the people have to sign up for.
Well, it's when you register with the ESD, when a family does that, what they're telling the state of Oregon is we are going to educate our own kid. We don't want to go to public school. That's what the ESD homeschool
But there's not like
registration
a
is.
curriculum.
There's not a curriculum that
The
we
ESD
provide a curriculum, and that's why we want to move those kids from ESD homeschool, parents 100% responsible to do our homeschool, and we'll provide you with a legit curriculum that you can use in your homeschool setting. But yeah,
I mean, but don't you think like most of those, like, that they're making that decision because they're like. They probably have some like fundamental, or like philosophical principle that they're like, I'm gonna teach my kids how to live off the land.
there's kind of two groups. There's the, we're trying to escape group. We don't want any
We don't
agency.
want, yeah.
Yeah, there's the escape group, and then there's we want to homeschool our children with our own beliefs and curriculum. So there's those kind of two groups, both of which we think that we can do some outreach and recruiting to both of those sort of groups of homeschooling families to say, you can still teach your kids what you want to teach them, but we can also help you with math and English and provide you some curriculum to do some of those, the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic. We can give you some good curriculum to do that with. And then the folks that are trying to avoid, we're trying to recruit them with, hey, we can not only help with curriculum, but we can also help with some other things that might be beneficial to your family. Like Glenn mentioned, gas cards. Come in, check in with us, get a gas card for coming into town and meet.
Do an
with
art
our center.
activity or be in the fishing derby or, what if they've got all kinds of activities.
One of the things that I like about having this facility is the social thing with the kids. The homeschool kids, I believe, would like some social activities with their.
Yeah, and that's why I'm asking about, like, I mean, it's an experiment, right? But I would guess, my guess is that most of those people that you're talking about are making the decision because they wanting to be in a place that isn't down on South Sixth Street or Washington Way of Klamath Falls. So I'm very skeptical that you're gonna like attract them to like come hang out in Klamath Falls.
Well, and I don't
They don't
think
wanna
the
do
rules
that.
prohibit us from recruiting from Burns or the Dells or wherever.
It doesn't because Baker has 10,000 kids enrolled.
No, so see, I'm not limiting Clinton County, so we just want to get started.
And I'm not saying we should do that, but Baker has 10,000 kids.
Okay, so moving on, we're almost there, guys. So Keno Elementary Seismic Project happened last summer. And we had from this Business Oregon, we had a grant for 2.4 million. With that, we did have to come out of the general fund for approximately 20,000 of that. There was some overages with the abatement that we did not expect in there. And so we covered those, that overage out of the general fund. And so that has been completed and was ready to go when we started school. The Chiloquin Elementary Seismic Project is coming up this summer. Currently, we're at 210,000. Estimated completion date is 9/30/25. However, that's my reporting period. So I believe that we have them scheduled for that August 22nd date so that they can get back in their building without problem. We do have, again, with Business Oregon, a almost $2.5 million grant with them, and we're just in the phases of that. I do know that they are going to be able to get in there early and start earlier because there's outside work that doesn't affect the students and affect the classroom time. So that is also in the works and is slated to start going. with that, I want to thank you guys for coming. Hopefully this gives you a lot of background as to what has happened in 24-25, where we're sitting right now. And then as you guys start going through your books and send in questions and going through on Thursday, we can make this pretty seamless. Again, send me your questions. I believe you guys all have my email. Yes.
I was gonna ask about the questions and, I don't know if it's like if there's how everyone feels about it, or if it's possible.
Sure.
But it would be really helpful for me, if when individuals were sending questions, if they could be shared with
Everybody.
with the whole committee. Because I feel there's a bit of redundancy too, and like someone's gonna ask the same question. But I also like really value everyone else's opinion or like what they're seeing. And it'd be nice to get, because I know last year I felt like sometimes I was in the loop, but sometimes I wasn't. Because there was maybe some conversation or like some emails that were like more direct, one individual back and forth.
So I was very careful about that because when, like Jason sent me, because I got a lot from you. I'm just gonna use you as an example. Sorry. But when he would email me and if it was just me on that email, and when I went back to answer, everybody was on that email. So I made darn sure that I was very careful of that. That every time I answered, everybody was getting the same information. Like you said, so you're not asking me the same question that Jason just asked me.
See, I have to ask you hardly any questions though from on the microphone last year.
So,
Right, you emailed
Stephanie, maybe it was Dennis. I think we had it set up so that it was a web page or something where if somebody asked a question, the question went on the page and then the answer. So it just was a scrolling thing where you could go back and see the questions and.
So I wonder if it was like a Google Doc where everybody had access to that Google Doc.
I don't
Maybe
know,
that was-
Annalise may have set up a web page just for the budget committee.
I can most certainly.
We could check on, Tammy, how would, I know when Dennis was here, we had it so that if somebody asked a question, it went onto the page and he would answer it and everybody could see the question, add to that.
And that.
Either of those two ways that you just described could happen. I don't know what we did last year with that.
Yeah.
I remember last year when she was saying, I would take a question.
Yeah.
Well,
So we can darn sure set up either a Google document that everybody has access to and just everybody submit and we can answer accordingly. And then, or we can set up,
yeah, thanks for
Public
reminding us of that. We'll
webpage.
make sure everybody sees it. all of it.
laws that has to be set up tonight.
Yeah.
And then we really need to decide on one way or the other. Otherwise, you're trying to answer.
the
two
same
and
question.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I thought last year.
Yeah.
I made sure. I
Majority
didn't-
vote. You guys tell me because I am happy to do whatever.
I don't mind the emails.
You did.
I just had to make sure my questions weren't insulting to Lost River because I let it.
Oh, jeez.
They're not gonna insult me.
Okay. Yes, Karen.
Okay, since I think one of the newest ones, just tell me like a little bit about Thursday's meeting and how that kind of looks.
So we'll start at 5 on Thursday. It'll be in here. You guys will actually be on the top row up here. And we have a budget message presentation to present to you. And then we I believe we start in a little bit with some questions, if there are any. I think with tonight having a kind of a review going, with the year, then that's gonna help going forward. And that was the intent, was to kind of alleviate that piece of it, so we can get into the bare bones of everything.
It's kind of like today, but I think it's.
Put you on the hot
Thanks,
spot.
Jason. So you think you're. Oh, are you gonna be somewhere else zooming?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So she's just trying to get over.
Yeah, just.
Yeah, so that's how that'll roll out, and then, like I mentioned before, people would, as they got to going through their, hey, we see a discrepancy here, what's that about? And trust me, my book's already tabbed with just things that, ooh, this might be a question.
Oh, yeah, we already answered some that I had
Yes,
tabbed already, so you're doing good.
we are ahead of the game this year.
When will the negotiations be finalized for budgeting?
Probably.
Um,
And
I
all
saw
that
that.
stuff, yeah.
So we are still in the middle of negotiations. I don't know when they'll be finalized. That will, I mean, it's just dependent on how each meeting goes.
Can't finalize the budget right until that's.
Well, here's the bad part, right? I'm required to submit something by June 30th. Doesn't matter. So, so I've got to submit something. What I have on the books right now, I feel like is reasonable, is something that we can work with. Am I expecting to do one September, October in that vicinity? Heck yes, right when we're auditing. Of course, we're gonna do a new budget. But that's gonna be the nature of the beast with the negotiation year.
So,
It's just terrible.
I think it's important that you guys know that we did a state of the district to both the certified and the classified. And what I told them is that they're gonna get the same information that the budget committee gets in the school board. It's all gonna be the same information. It's going to change as things evolve, as the budget committee looks at things and the legislature finishes up what they're doing. And so the message will change, but it'll change for everybody. The one thing that we're not gonna talk about is the hypothetical raises or anything like that, because all we have to do is say one thing and now it's gospel,
Yes.
whether people like it or don't like it. So we're not gonna talk about any potential raises or anything like that until the legislature, behind the scenes, we're working on it a lot. Until so that when the legislature makes a decision, within an hour, we'll probably know what we have to offer. And what I'm telling the employees is that we are doing our darndest to be efficient and must put as much money in their pockets as we possibly can. And we've got fund balance criteria to meet, we've got all these different criteria to meet. But the ultimate is to try to get money in their pockets so we can recruit the best teachers. That's what I'm telling them.
Trust me, this has not been an easy budget to put together, but.
You know, my other question was, I mean, I know I asked this a lot,
Okay.
but with the federal funding,
Yes.
is there any kind of indication on anything from, okay.
Not really. What we went with is status quo. No increase in those federal fundings, but it will be status quo. Behind the scenes, like he's talking, we're already talking in cabinet, okay, if title goes away, what do we do with the folks that are being budgeted out of title, right? So those conversations are happening to prepare for 25, 26. We're staying status quo. We're staying on the course until we get notified otherwise, because we really just don't know. I mean, unfortunately, it's just a don't know. And it's the same with the state school fund. Yeah, she's proposed, but it has not moved anywhere. So until that gets, I mean, it's the same thing. So we don't.
Generally speaking, I don't want, is it like if Title I money goes away, imagine they just took that field away. You can't plant it. That program went away. We're not gonna try to do something we don't have money to do.
Ways means they're tight-lipped.
Mhm, very tight.
Yes.
Yes, very tight.
They did love Anna and Tia
I
talking
know.
though.
Well, that's
Lots of
perfect.
pictures and lots
But
of,
there aren't any budgets that are finished yet through the state.
Correct. Now they, just so y'all know, they can do that. They don't have to have a budget by June 30th, but we do.
Balanced.
And balanced, yes, correct. So it does make it very, very difficult. And like I said, this was probably one of my hardest ones in the 11 years that I've been doing this with the school district situation. But I do feel like we have a good starting point and we're starting on solid ground. Yes, is there work afterwards? Probably so. And That's the nature of the beast, and so many facets of it, the negotiation side of it, the state side of it, the federal side of it, it's all gonna change again. I'm fully prepared. Spend Christmas vacation on that. Oh, wait, I don't get one of those. But no, for
Well,
real.
there's another piece too. And I wanna say, did Mark leave?
Yeah, I think he's, yeah.
Well, I wish I would say this. When Mark went to DC on the water issues, he hooked up with, Commissioner DeGroot, who's on the Secure Rural Schools Act Committee. And that's something we've been battling to keep secure rural schools. The federal government did not reauthorize the Secure Rural Schools Act. And it's a big deal for us and the county. But Mark did an excellent job advocating for that, as well as Derek did. They spent quite a bit of time to, I mean, even when I was with Merkley, he said, well, you guys made a good impact there. I'm hopeful that Secure Rural Schools Act goes through again. And whether it does or doesn't, we still are going to get about 2.3 to 2.5 million from the state in back pay that they did not give us.
And
So
and you'll see that in your budget document.
Somewhere
It's
in
a
there.
pretty big jump, but that's
Four-
why. Is
about
that
4.5
2.5?
million.
for us, it's about 2.5, and we're the biggest winners on that in the whole state.
And you'll see that jump in there. Sorry.
One more question then. On, so our enrollment was down about 1.5%. Statewide, what was enrollment down for?
It was down.
It
a
was
lot.
down, yeah.
So the net isn't as bad. I mean, being down obviously is not good, but
That
they
per
divide,
student is better.
Yeah.
But that gets adjusted next year.
And they've been holding
Yeah.
districts
So-
harmless, but we're still doing a lot better.
Yeah, so briefly, 23, 24 is what we're getting reconciled for right now as far as that ADM is looking. And so we are actually sitting really well. It's roughly, I believe, about $1 million that they have said that we should be getting in this May payment. And so with that, they held us harmless and used the 22-23 enrollment figures to get us right sized. So as we got about midpoint in 24-25, we're looking at the enrollment numbers and what we had estimated. Whoa, we're gonna be way out of whack here. So what we did, we have opportunity to adjust that every year, about December or so. And so I went in and I adjusted us back down so that we got ahead of it. So we're taking that hit now rather than in May of 26.
but the dollars per ADM is gonna be higher than it was.
Yeah, it usually goes up, but then there's,
Right.
Right, so the division, but yeah, so the dollars per ADM is climbing at a higher rate than we are declining.
yes.
Yeah, we've been benefiting that ever since we came back from COVID, big time.
Right,
Yes,
it's
yes.
just, now we don't get the double benefit, being increasing our benefits.
Right, correct.
But then the state doesn't fully fund special ed.
Yeah,
We
that's,
have 19% and the state only pays 11.
But that goes out of the word upper, and that's.
Right.
yeah, that's a
That's-
weighted piece of the puzzle.
But a big piece.
Oh, yes, for sure, a big piece. And there's a tons of weights in there for all kinds of teen parents that we get a little bit
Almost.
added. Homeless is in there, yeah. So, I mean, there's all the factors.
Yeah, no, yeah, the, as long as our rate of decrease is less than the rate of decrease for the state, it's a less.
We're keeping it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a hit, but it's not a hit.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, for sure. All right, anything else? 5:26, Steve.
I know, I gotta go.
I know. So we'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thanks.
And well, feel free to send us questions already.